It's time for Halo Book Club.
Welcome, Spartans, to another Halo Book Club episode, part of Podcast Evolved, your home for Halo. I am your host, Aaron, and with me today we have Oren.
Hey, everyone.
This book club, we are covering the Halo comic series Uprising. This is one I have never read before, so this was all new to me, and I learned some fun facts today that we will cover as we go along. But before we go into it, we will do some quick socials. If you're new to the show, welcome to Podcast Evolved. We host a variety of podcasts. This is the book club where we talk about the Halo novels, short stories and comic book series. We are almost entirely up to date on all things Halo. If you're listening to this, we are so close to being completely up to date. It's magical. This is a very exciting time before 343 dump a load of new novels on us and we're buried again. If you enjoy this, go and listen to our other shows. We have Halo Headlines, Bills with Blocks, and Mission Debrief. They are currently doing their 20 for 20 series on YouTube, so if you get a chance, go and check that out. And then go and check out our partners over at HCS Pro Talk, where Josh and Will talk about all things competitive in the world of Halo. They have a particular emphasis on esports. Go and listen to the guys. You'll also hear they do a good segment for us on every live episode, and we appreciate them for it. You can also check out all of our episodes over on the website. It's halopodcastevolved.com. There is loads of great information and stuff there, thanks to Ian. If you're already a fan of the show, we would ask you to go and leave us a review on your platform of choice. We appreciate all the feedback from you guys. You help us make the show better. And we would also like to take a minute to thank all of our patrons for your continued support. Thank you very much, guys. It never grows old to see another email come in that we have a new patron.
Yes, thank you guys so much.
If you would like to become one of our patrons, you can go to patreon.com/Halo Podcast Evolved. If you go there, you can get details on all of the exclusive rewards that we offer, early episodes, unique swag, access to our soundtrack, and the patron-only Discord channel. All good things. And finally, we encourage our listeners to support Audible. There you can enjoy a growing collection of Halo novels all in one place, along with thousands of other novels, guided wellness programs, and much, much more. Use the URL audibletrial.com/podcast evolved to learn more about starting your free trial today. Now, Oren, I'm going to hand over to you, and you're going to take us through Uprising.
Yes, so Halo Uprising, one of the early comics in the Halo lore, came out. There was a 4-issue comic that started in 2007 and had some kind of terrible delays, and so issue 4 didn't even come out till spring of 2009. So it was a long road for this series, but it was supposed to bridge the gap a little bit between Halo 2 and Halo 3, and so it was the intention for this to come out during the lead up to Halo 3's release in, I think, September of 2007, and so kind of in that fall time frame, but after delays for issues 3 and 4, it took over a year for those issues to come out. But to kind of give us some housekeeping before we get into the events of the comic, it was written by Brian Michael Bendis. The cover art and the pencils and ink work were done by Alex Maleev. Then we have 3 colorists, Matt Hollingsworth, Jose Villarrubia, Villabarua. I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing that likely Spanish name. And then June Chung, and the lettering was done by Chris Alepoas.
I'm so glad you took these names.
That's why you wanted me to do this part, just to avoid the names.
Absolutely.
It's always a burden to attempt to read individuals' names at times. But it was published by Marvel Comics, which I think also did the graphic novel. So, Dark Horse not traditionally, but recently and more modernly have been doing a lot of the publishing for the comics. And so these are the Marvel Comics sides of the comic world. You can get both print and ebooks editions of the whole collection. And like I said, issue 1 was in August of 2007. Issue 2 was November of 2007. Issue 3 was a whole year later in August of 2008. And then issue 4 finally in April of 2009. And shortly thereafter in June, there was a hardcover collection for all 4 issues in one sort of package. And then kind of since then, we've had re-releases with the oversized collection in October of 2013, and very recently in August of 2021, we had the Legacy collection, which also included some other of the old Marvel / Bungie era comic pieces. So,
is the Legacy collection Dark Horse then?
The Legacy collection, I believe, is Dark Horse. Yes, if you wanted to fact check that while I continue on, but I believe it's. I think it kind of calls out Marvel Comics in the sense that they did the artwork, but then I think the re-release was kind of packaged and done through Dark Horse. It's about 160 pages. It's about 40 pages per issue. And it follows a few events between Halo 2 and Halo 3, such as the UNSC's response to the Covenant invasion of Earth, and the Master Chief's endeavors while on board the Forerunner key ship Dreadnought. So we'll kind of break down each issue as it kind of jumps between those two main storylines with a few other tidbits tied in there. It takes place over a 2-week period between November 3rd, 2552, and November 17th, 2552. And we don't have exact dates per se, but we know that the Master Chief boarded the Dreadnought on the 3rd and then exited the Dreadnought on the 17th as kind of a way to, that period between Halo 2 and Halo 3. And we primarily are on Earth for one storyline in the United Republic of North America in Cleveland, and then we're on the ship, the Dreadnought, which is in the Sol system near like Jupiter and Mars and things like that. Our characters in one story, we have Colonel James Ackerson, who we know from Fall of Reach and First Strike and some of those other lore pieces there. We learn that he has a brother, and so we follow him as long as a female singer artist, Myris. And then we have the Master Chief in his story, and he talks with some UNSC personnel that's on Jupiter's moon Io, as well as the Prophet of Truth and the Minister of Inquisition, and things in that nature. So, let's dive in. So, issue 1 starts off with the Master Chief on the Dreadnought, and a lot of the Master Chief's sort of sections in this graphic novel is just him just like mercilessly killing all of the Covenant that he sees, and it's pretty graphic, I think. It's definitely a little bit more detailed, gritty, dirty, like blood splashes on things, dirt smudges, and just much more of that nitty and gritty than like escalation, if you were to compare the two. So pretty much anytime you see Chief, he is just laying it down, and he's also being like covert because he's on the Dreadnought trying to keep his impact down until the shooting starts.
There's a lot of explosions going on there. I don't know how covert we can say he's been. I love the scene where he blows a door up and it's just one full panel devoted to him standing at the top of these steps as an army of brutes and grunts come up, and like the smoke's clearing and he just looks badass up in the distance there. But almost every one of his panels here is either lit by explosions or gunfire.
Yeah, they definitely needed some key lighting, and so they supplemented that with AR fire and grenade explosions. I was gonna say, yeah, like he's also the I guess there's a base on the Jupiter's moon that's trying to hail him and being like, Master Chief, what's going on? And he's like ignoring them and saying like radio silence and like trying to, like I said, trying to be covert. Meanwhile, he's literally blowing shit up. So it's pretty comical. So we get some intense action sequences there. Then it cuts to Colonel Ackerson, and he looks pretty bad. He's also very bloody and gritty, and bound and being interrogated by a Bruth chieftain on a battle cruiser near Mars that is on its way to Earth. And Ackerson is, not giving any information and trying to, protect humanity and all that. And just when the brutes are like, well, your use to us has been kind of extinguished, we'll just kind of kill you now. He was like, oh, but wait, there's this key on Earth that if you kill me, then you will never find it, and if you never find it, then the rings will malfunction just like they did thousands of years ago. The brutes are like, what? Do we believe this guy? And they're, because the humans are known to lie a lot. And so basically they interrogate him more, and Ackerson says that there's this key, it's called the Keys of Ozelon, and it's in Cleveland. So have fun finding Cleveland. How the Covenant or these brutes found Cleveland, I don't know. I'm not even sure where Cleveland is right now.
I love that they call it in the panel, they're like, Cleveland, what is a cleave?
Yeah, what is a cleave? That is pretty good. So then, what does it do? Now we jump to Cleveland, and we see what's in there. And we meet this new character, who we learn is Ruan, and he is Colonel Ackerson's brother, which we don't technically learn until later, I think in issue 3. But he is a concierge for a Highline motel in Cleveland, and the motel is under attack by the Covenant, and he's kind of like down on his luck, and he's kind of thinking to himself, like, is it even worth like escaping now that the Covenant are here? And he seems just to be very gloomy and depressed. And then enters this badass like singer chick. Like, you kind of learn more about her later on, but her name's Myris, and she just starts wrecking shit. Like, she's like jumping around, and she's like killing brutes and stuff, and she's like also like having her own anguish and like frustrations out on the world, and being like, this guy Philip left me and he ran away and he's supposed to protect me, and what am I doing with my life? Like, I want to be a singer, but I just, pose nude for these magazines, and like has all this dark past. And so she's like a super troubled woman.
It sounds very much, it sort of sounds like her backstory is she sold her soul to be a pop star when really she wanted to be like a quote-unquote real musician and like write her own music and do her own stuff, and like she didn't want to do music for kids, and she didn't want to pose in all these outfits for photos, and that wanker abandoned her, so she's just like having a bit of a bad time of it.
Yeah, she's channeling like all of her anger like to a good cause by like killing all these freaking brutes and stuff. And so anyway, during all the commotion at this hotel, the two of them meet. And so they kind of escape together into like this back alley. And so they're talking. They're like, what's going on? Where are we going? This and that. And then they get actually intercepted by some jackals and then get escorted to like a stadium where everyone else in the area is being escorted to. And they're like, what's going on? What do they want? Why are we over here? And that kind of leaves us with the question of what's going on. And then it cuts back to the Master Chief. He's doing some more badass fighting, but then a brute sidesteps him, knocks him over, and then like puts his foot on his chest and is like, tell me where the key of Ozelon is. Tell me, demon. And then that's where issue 1 kind of just ends. All in all, for issue 1, like I thought it was a pretty good setup for what's going on. We kind of know what's going on a little bit with the key of Ozelon, but it seems that it's a lot of confusion of where it is and what it is. And so far, Master Chief is just trying to stay alive.
So far, I wasn't really feeling the Earth storyline, I will admit. I came around on it a bit more as we go on here, but I wasn't feeling it at this stage.
I wasn't like into it, but I was still for it. It's like, all right, I'm always a fan of kind of civilians dealing with the Covenant, because we usually don't get that side of the story too often compared to the more militaristic side of things that we get in the Halo novels and other mediums. So I enjoy seeing a sort of less capable person, I suppose, deal with these types of issues. And it's another thing where, yeah, we know that the Covenant landed in multiple areas around Earth, and in Halo 3 we're in Kenya. To see them drop in other parts of the world just kind of gives a little bit more context of like this giant invasion that happened on Earth. All right, well, just kind of continuing on from there, we pick up right where we left off. The Master Chief is being interrogated by that brute on the ground, and basically the Chief kind of like toys with him a little bit, manages to like get a plasma grenade and says some like cheesy little one line, whereas like you should make sure your prey have been disarmed, and then he chucks the plasma grenade like at the brute's like balls, and like ducks away, and then the brute like dies, and then Chief goes back to his sneaky ways, but manages to get out of that one.
I think we specifically need a medal in future Halos called Uprising if you can stick someone in the crotch.
That's awesome. We should talk to Jeff Stizer and have him say Uprising.
And then let us talk to our connections at 343 and see, can we pitch this as a thing?
We almost have a medal, because there's the Combat Evolved medal where the guy goes Combat Evolved, like, hey. So it'd be cool to get something in there. All right, let's see. So then we cut back to our Cleveland story. We get more of Myris's backstory, and she's kind of, I don't think she's like outwardly speaking any of these thoughts, but she's definitely internalizing a lot of this among all the pandemonium that's going on in the stadium. But while everyone's in the stadium and all the Covenant are trying to seize control of it, a giant like ambush of Marines and ODSTs show up and kind of liberate a lot of the people that are in the stadium. And so Ruan and Miras escape in I think a Warthog, and they just drive bat out of hell, shooting things, and Myris kills more people or whatever, more aliens, and has some PTSD about it. But they like get to like an abandoned little building. They take a not a torch, like a roadside flare. They kind of light that. They create a fire. They have like a nice tender little moment. They change their dirty clothes into like Marine garb. And do they kiss, or is it like an almost kiss?
No, they do actually kiss, and then they almost sleep together, and then it's like, no.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, because the panels I don't think really had their lips touching, so I didn't know if it was insinuating that they were reserved or if it was just different, like a before and an after moment.
I'm gonna hope they kissed.
I think they kissed. But then a giant scarab comes in and kind of cocksblock them, and they're like, oh my gosh, what is going on? That kind of ends that moment. But that, I will say that scene and that sequence of them kind of talking, didn't necessarily, I don't know, win me over, but it definitely was a touching moment for the two of them, as we know kind of how troubling it is when the Covenant invade planets and what they need to do. We also get a little bit of more backstory with Ruan, and he starts talking about the Key of Ozelon, and we get some hints as to what that is, that he knows about it. And that it's something that him and his brother talked about, but he kind of just left it there. He didn't really elaborate. And then we quickly jump back to the Master Chief, where he is now covertly running around. He has a carbine rifle, and he sees the Prophet of Truth in his like chambers with like his honor guard, and he reaches out to command at the moon Io, says that he, doesn't know what this Ozelon key is, but to catalog it, and, he's going to try to assassinate the Prophet of Truth. And he fires, and then the panel cuts to black, if you will, and that's our issue 2. So I much preferred issue 2. I think it kind of definitely picked up with issue 1. and kind of carried things over a little bit more exciting, and the stakes are a little bit higher. Issue 3, it starts with a flashback, and this is where we learn that Ruan and James are siblings, and that they created the Key of Azalan, and that it was kind of this fictitious, not red herring. What's the?
Let us be specific. They are big old nerds, and they invented.
They are
this
nerds,
key.
but also they are nerds, but they are in Halo canon. They are Tolkien nerds. J.R.R. Tolkien is Halo canon, so the Lord of the Rings exists in the Halo universe. That's what that said.
It's refreshing to see characters in the Halo universe not doing sci-fi things. It's kind of like it wasn't something I was thinking of, and then I flicked across and was like, oh, they've got swords and helmets, and they're arguing over who's going to fight the dragon.
Yeah, and who's going to kiss the princess.
It's kind of funny because the correct brother ends up the same way as this fight, where the brother that didn't want to kiss the princess ends up with the princess, and the other brother ends up fighting the dragon.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to look at it. But kind of building off of that, this Key of Azalan is something that they kind of invented, and it's kind of like just a general MacGuffin that they used in their pretend playing as kids as something that they needed to acquire to save the princess or whatever. Ruan is kind of just confused now that it cuts back to the present with Miras, why the Covenant knows about the Key of Azalan, and he's like, well, maybe it's just like a common thing, like we didn't like invent it, like the words out there in the universe. And then Miras says, well, then maybe your brother told him about it as a way to, say something or to protect you or something like that, which kind of got Ruan thinking, and eventually says, hey, let's hop back in the Warthog. I want to take you somewhere. And so they go into this like underground base that I guess he just knew existed. That's kind of where we leave that. And then we cut back to the Master Chief, and he attempts to kill the Prophet of Truth, but fails because the Prophet of Truth has a shield generator barrier thing over his hover chair, and he then has to escape. He's talking with the outpost on Io that he needs to escape, and more shooting his way out and that sort of thing. And then there's another moment with Ruan and Miras when they actually reconnect with some UNSC Marines, and they talk about this key, and he basically says the key doesn't exist, like we made it up. And the Marines are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he's like, I need to talk to like your superior officer. Like, can you take me? Like, I got an idea. I got a plan how we can fight back against the Covenant. And they're like, yeah, sure, okay, I guess. And so they hop in a Pelican and they fly away. And that's basically issue 3.
It's funny, the scene where just before they meet up with the Pelican, he runs over some brutes, but in the close-up of where the brute decapitated head hits the bonnet of the Warthog, it looks like a giant prophet head. It's got this weird shape to it, and the neck's distended. It's like he decapitated a giant prophet of truth. I had to double check that.
Like obscenely large. It's pretty funny. So then, issue 4, our climactic finish, it sees Ruan, Miras, and those Marines. They go to that secret underground base, and they talk with the kind of leading officers there, and basically hatch this plan where they will infiltrate the Covenant ship or the Covenant cruiser to deliver this imaginary key, and they inject Ruan with this serum called Tychos 30, which is like this liquid tracking device type of a thing that kind of lives in your body. And then once he's on board, they can track him to see where he is, so they can fire a projectile at him so they can blow it all up. So then, knowing that this is kind of the end, Ruan and Miras have a touching moment, kind of says farewell, that they enjoyed their very brief time together, but Miras is hopeful that she can have a new life, that she wants to start anew, and that's kind of where that leads. Then we cut to the Master Chief. He's continuing to escape, drives a ghost, he hears about, I think Io Station's kind of in contact with these Marines, so they are aware about this pending explosion that's going to happen, and now Master Chief is kind of getting closer to Earth, and so now he needs to start thinking of a way to get off the Dreadnought and kind of reconvene with the UNSC. Then we go back to Ruan, and he boards the ship, just kind of steps in the tractor beam, goes up, and he says, "I am the key, everybody, come to me, like I am the key," and everyone's kind of confused, and this is Ruan kind of accepting that he can be the hero, and hope that he's able to save someone, or not necessarily all of humanity, but just kind of do his part, if you will, and thanks kind of his brother for what he was doing. And so the Mac cannon targets him because he's the tracker, blows up the ship, blows up Ruan. Also in this sort of issue, I'm not sure where exactly, we cut back to Ackerson, who is on board the ship, and they basically realize that it was all for nothing, and the brutes, in sort of retaliation, decapitate Colonel Ackerson. So both brothers end up dead, and this is the sad valiant way that Colonel Ackerson dies after so much of of what he's gone through, both deserved and not deserved, over his career in the UNSC. And then the issue closes out back at Master Chief, where he essentially just jumps off the Dreadnought, or drives a Ghost off. And then it leads into the opening scene of Halo 3, where we see a giant Master Chief spec fly towards the camera. And Cortana's talking to you about luck.
It's not a bad story.
No, it's not. It's we were kind of talking about this before. It's one of those stories that, like, something obviously happens, but like there's no overarching ramifications because it's pretty contained. But I mean, it's still an enjoyable story, and it gives you some insight on just kind of what are some things that just go on Earth in these types of situations. And that's kind of the biggest thing I took out of it. I mean, Master Chief on the Dreadnought just kind of shooting people or aliens, you could almost just make like 2 multiplayer levels out of it. Like, that didn't really add anything. I would say the story is more so about the this key of Azalan and Ruan with Miras, and kind of their attempts to just survive, and what they had to do that, or not do that. But yeah, this was my first time reading it as well, like you mentioned at the top of the show, Aaron. So it's a pleasant one. I think it's definitely worth a look, because the art style is so much different compared to the more modern Halo comic book art. So if you wanted to see Halo through a different lens, I'd definitely recommend you check it out for that reason. But it's a very easy read as well. You could do this in a day, and yeah, that's kind of my final thoughts on that. Anything you want to add?
Not overly. The art style's not bad. I'd say it's more of a darker comic, color-wise, for the most part, than some of the others, but like, it's a good, crisp, clear art style. You very rarely read a panel and go, what the fuck is going on here? Like, you can recognize everyone and see everything. I came round on the story on the people on Earth more to the end than I did at the start. By issue 2 and 3, I was like, okay, this actually isn't that bad. Because otherwise, yes, like you said, this would pretty much have been a 4-issue story of Chief fighting his way off the Dreadnought, and that would have been it. It could have been that story, because the human Earth part could be left out and it wouldn't really make any difference anyway. But it is interesting to see how Ackerson bows out of the Halo universe, because like you, I didn't know about this until I read it. To see it and see how he like ends up kind of makes you rethink how nasty Cortana was to him in First Strike.
Yeah, that's a fair observation.
Yeah, she fucks him over. She fuck him over in contact or in Fall of Reach, and then I think she does something else to him later as well.
Yeah, well, it happens, I think, once they're in orbit. Like, I think it happens more so in Fall of Reach than First Strike, but I don't think we really learn about it until Dr. Halsey's journal, right?
Yeah, and then we only hear from him again for Ghosts of Onyx. So that's really it, and then he gets shafted. Not that he's not exactly the most warm, lovable character, but you also, like, being tortured by the Covenant seems a bit excessive.
Yeah, no one wants that, and he stayed. I'd say he did his duty all the way up to the end. Keeping secrets and all that.
The bit I find the saddest is that at one point the characters on Earth are talking about it, and they're like, "Oh, maybe he did this to protect you because look, the Covenant aren't destroying Cleveland like other cities." And then the brother goes, "The only solution is to go up there and get blown up." And you're like, "No, you've died anyway." Like, if this was his final act, that was it. As it, Ruin ends up getting blown up anyway, so that's kind of a thing.
Yeah, but you could also look at that, they still saved, mostly the population of Cleveland. There was probably some casualties here and there, but for the most part, the city wasn't just annihilated. There was still some hope in there.
I do love the UNSC's plan, though, because, like, in theory, it makes sense. You inject this guy with this tracking thing, you're important, they're going to take you to the Prophet. It's just a shame that the Prophet was not on that ship. Although it's probably for the best that they didn't take him to the Dreadnought, because the Mac guns would probably not even have touched the Dreadnought.
No, not at all.
But overall, like, not a bad comic. Yeah,
not bad at all. If anyone has some spare Halo lore they want to catch up on, Uprising is a good treat, a good afternoon read.
And just to drop it in here to confirm from earlier, the new version is Dark Horse, and there's according to our good friend Amazon, the Legacy Collection is coming out on November 30th. The Halo Legacy Collection in paperback will be available November 30th of this year.
We have a little bit of trivia before we take it home. All of the covers for Uprising of all 4 issues show Master Chief on Earth, but in all 4 of the issues, he is still on board the Forerunner Dreadnought. So it's kind of comical in that regard. And then for issue 1, the Master Chief is depicted getting hit by 6 Hunter fuel rod beams, which is likely an accurate depiction of the weapon's strength. We know that you can not take that many off, or not take that many hits, even in a superpowered shielded suit. And then for issue 3 on the cover, the gravity hammer depicted is not emitting its characteristic blue glow. This could mean that at some point in the Master Chief's fight, the gravity hammer ran out of energy, and perhaps the Master Chief was forced to continue using the hammer as a simple bludgeon, as opposed to the actual gravity hammer, which I find interesting because that happens in the campaign. You'll run out of energy and you won't get the shockwave, but you can still whack people with it.
Do you know, I would never think to whack people with a dead gravity hammer. I'd just chuck it and go for something else.
It's a little bit more useful, or I guess for the sake of the game balance, it's probably not much stronger than running out of energy on your energy sword, because then if you keep trying to use it, you just punch people. But at least with the hammer, you have, an item.
It would be nice if, because there's a blade on the other side of it, if you could just use it as a melee weapon, spin it round when it's empty, and just smash the blade into people.
Yeah, just don't have a lunge or anything. Just
a very Game of Thrones. Just lodge it in the top of the enemy's head and then pull it out and move on.
There you go. Right. Well, I think that about does it, huh?
Alright, well, I think, we can wrap up for another book club. So, guys, thank you for joining us. Like we mentioned at the top of the show, you can find all of our episodes over on the website. That's halopodcastevolved.com. It also features links to the Discord server, Facebook group, Patreon page, Xbox Live Club. Particularly go and join the club on Xbox Live because you'll be able to find other people from the podcast to play Infinite with. Once again, another special shout out to all of our patrons for supporting the show and helping to make everything possible. Head over to patreon.com/Halo Podcast Evolve to learn more. And finally, if you would like to leave us a voicemail about this episode or any other episodes, or anything Halo related for that matter, you can give us a call at 205 Evolved. That's 205-386-5833. And with that, I have been your host Aaron, and until next time, Evolved.
Evolved.